Hello again, watch friends. Welcome back. Here we are again with more watch secrets. You know, secrets that watches either have physically or have about them. We all have watches like this. Here are a few more that you may enjoy and that might even surprise you. Looking at the Quai de Bargue, you might think that it's a pretty watch, nothing more. But in reality, and secret-wise, this Czapek is a threefer. Let me explain. The modern Czapek brand was launched in 2015 via a crowdfunding campaign. Although in modern times this approach is more identifiable with value brands, or so-called micro brands, the arrangement has a historical precedent. Early watchmakers in the 19th century used this method of financing to pre-finance their watch production. Czapek & C is named after a Polish watchmaker from the early to mid-1800s named Francois Czapek. In 1832, Francois started his own watch atelier, and in 1839 teamed up with a fellow Polish watchmaker whom you may have heard of, named Antoni Patek. Yes, that Patek. The Patek and Czapek partnership lasted for 6 years, after which the two watchmakers decided to part company. Antoni Patek eventually partnered with a guy named Jean-Adrien Philippe in 1851, and Francois started his own brand called Czapek & C. Mr. Czapek was quite successful and soon became the watchmaker of Napoleon III. So the first secret, if you will, is that Czapek, the watchmaker from the 1800s and whose namesake is on the brand today, was the first partner of Antoni Patek. Another, perhaps well-known secret, therefore not qualifying as a real secret, I guess, is that the first wristwatch that modern Swiss Czapek & C introduced in 2015, the Quai de Bargue, won the GPHG Public Prize in 2016. That's pretty impressive for a first-time outing, given that the Grand Prix Horlogerie de Genève watch entries are quite respected and examples of the best of haute horology. The Quai de Bargue is named after the street in which Francois Czapek had his workshop way back when, in 1845. At the time, this promenade along the Rhone River was the epicenter of the Genevan art de vivre, like the Palace Vendôme in Paris, where Francois Czapek opened what was probably the first watchmaker's boutique on this legendary square. The modern Czapek brand says they wanted to create watches in the spirit of Francois' pocket watches, and as if he was designing today. To that end, Czapek say they use the best suppliers in the industry, who they actually call partners. One of the partners is Chronograph, who makes movements for a number of high-end brands. They custom-made this manual wind movement, caliber SHX1, beating at 3 Hertz, for this watch. It has 2 barrel springs, a full week of power, 168 hours, and fine finishing including beveled edges, blued screws, sandblasted bridges, and a snail finish on the twin ratchet wheels. The movement is simply beautiful, and the week-long power reserve is the second secret. The final secret is in plain sight on the dial, and is coincident with the movement. Like the Czapek pocket watch of yore, there are 2 subdials on the gorgeous K dial, a running seconds at 7:30, and a power reserve / day of week indicator at 4:30. The secret is that the power reserve subdial also cleverly tells you the day of the week. This is a charming, if not a little quirky, complication. If you do a full wind of the watch on Sunday, the double-ended hand on the subdial will show you that day of the week and the remaining power as the number of days left. If it's Tuesday and the watch is out of power, you just do a partial wind until the day indicator shows Tuesday. Easy peasy. I can't leave the discussion of the Czapek without mentioning the beautiful engine-turned twin guilloche dial, which was inspired by a historical design created by Francois Czapek in the 1850s. It has an unusual ricochet pattern, which has two central points from which the guilloche pattern originates. Think of tossing two pebbles into a pond and watching their individual ripples emanate, and also the wave interference of the two sets of ripples. That's the Quai de Bargue dial. My piece, with its rainforest green dial, is stunning. It measures a svelte 38.5 millimeters in diameter and is a limited edition of only 10 pieces. The Seiko 6139-6002 chronograph has at least two secrets. One is the watch actually part of the movement, and one is about the watch. Sure, it may look like an old Seiko chronograph, and, well, it is, since it's from 1973. But you may not know that this watch, not my watch of course, was the first automatic chronograph in space. Most of us know the story of the first watch to be worn on the moon. It was the Omega Speedmaster that Neil Armstrong carried on Apollo 11 during the first moon landing in 1969. Omega has marketed this fact ad infinitum, and there are, and have been, dozens of variants of the moon watch. However, the Speedmaster that Neil Armstrong used was a manual wind watch. In 1985, German astronaut Reinhard Feuer wore a self-winding Sinn 140 during the Spacelab 1 mission. However, the Sinn was not the first automatic chrono in space. This honor belongs to the Seiko 6139-6002. Here's the story. The Seiko, otherwise known as the Pogue, is named after Colonel Pogue, who was a NASA astronaut on the 1973 Skylab 4 mission. He purchased a 6139 personally at the PX at Ellington Air Force Base and used it extensively during his training. Although the watch wasn't flight approved by NASA, Colonel Pogue brought the watch with him as part of his personal kit on that Skylab flight. During the 84-day flight, Pogue used the Seiko 2 times for engine burns. Colonel Pogue was issued a NASA-approved Speedmaster, which he used for several spacewalks. The second secret is not obvious to the casual observer, but is well known to those who wear the 6139 chrono. It relates to how the day and date functions are set. Many watches, including those by Seiko, have a quick set date function, where pulling the crown to the first position and rotating it will set the date. If there's also a date complication, sometimes rotating the crown in one direction sets the date, and rotating it in the other direction sets the day. On this chrono, there is what I think is a clever way to set the day and the date. The date is changed by pushing the crown in halfway. It takes a little practice, but once you get the hang of it, it can be done reliably. Each push advances the date 1 day. If the crown is pushed in all the way, the day and the date change together. Pretty cool, I think. So there you have the 2 secrets of the Seiko 6139 Pogue. A watch with a history, as well as an unusual and unique day-date setting functions. I like it. Watches don't have to be expensive to be interesting, or to have a secret, either. I've described many of my watches at all prices and various levels of horology that have secrets. Such is the case with the Seagull 1963 chronograph, which contains a couple of secrets. This particular Seagull is a remake of the 1963 Chinese Air Force chronograph. At the time, the Chinese government mandated that a watch for pilots in the People's Liberation Army Air Force be created. This is a column wheel chronograph that is based on the Venus 175 movement. Venus, including the design, tooling, etc., was sold off by the Swiss brand Minerva to the Chinese in the mid-20th century. So there's the first secret. A surprisingly high-quality movement in an inexpensive, about $300, watch. A column wheel is thought by watch enthusiasts to be a superior to more typical and less expensive lever-based chronograph movements. The caliber ST21 in this Seagull is a hand-winding movement that beats at 21,600 beats per hour. Secret number 2, that the movement is hand-winding. All of the movement action can be seen through the exhibition caseback. The 1963 Seagull Chrono is available in several dial colors and with either a sapphire or acrylic, that is plastic, crystal. It also comes in 2 sizes, 38 millimeters, my watch, or a larger 41 millimeters. I think the cream dial is the most attractive colorway, and the plastic crystal gives it a cool retro vibe. Of course, the Chinese characters and red Chinese Communist Party red star add to the overall appeal. The final secret is that Tianjin Seagull is one of the world's largest watch manufacturers currently in business. There it is, a watch with an interesting history, a horologically significant movement, tons of character, all for $300. Secrets notwithstanding, the Seagull 1963 Chrono is a cool military-style watch in attractive dress-up clothes. Some people think that Tudor is a lesser brand than its brandmate Rolex. More disparagingly, others think that Tudor watches are purchased when one cannot afford a Rolex. I disagree on both counts. Tudor has its own history, dating back to 1946, when Rolex founder Hans Wilsdorf wanted to create a brand that was more accessible than the Rolex brand, but still provided the high standards known for in the Rolex watches. By the early 1950s, the Tudor Oyster, and later Prince models, were becoming well established as a separate line of their own. In 1954, the first Tudor-branded Submariner watch made its debut. It was a 100-meter water-resist diver with a Rolex Oyster case and bracelet and a movement made by Fleurier. A decade later, Tudor created a dive watch for the U.S. Navy called the Tudor Prince Submariner. The brief history lesson here is simply to point out that Tudor has had dive watch cred for more than half a century. In 2004, Tudor discontinued marketing watches in the USA, but returned in 2012 with the Tudor Heritage Black Bay Burgundy. And what a return it was. The first Black Bay had a combination of elements from vintage Tudor divers, including 200-meter water resist, snowflake hands, large crown with the Tudor Rose logo, no crown guards, and a domed sapphire crystal. In short, a modern watch with many classic and vintage elements. Now, there are all kinds of Black Bay variants, bronze cases, black PVD models, a bezel-less version, a small 36mm size, and even a chronograph. The Black Bay line has been extremely popular since its inception. You get Rolex quality at a significantly lower price and dial designs that are a mashup of the best of vintage Rolex and Tudor dive watches. This Black Bay Blue was the second iteration of the series. Arriving just 2 years after the Black Bay Burgundy, the Black Bay Blue has a few changes, more than just a midnight blue bezel. The dial is now a matte black instead of a chocolate brown, like the original, and the lettering is now a subdued silver color instead of gold. Further, the hands and hour indices now have white gold surrounds instead of rose gold.
If you look closely, you'll see that the crown stem color matches the bezel color. One thing that hasn't changed, and herein lies the secret, is that the Black Bay Blue is powered by the same movement that powered the original burgundy version, the ETA 2824-2. Why is this a secret? Well, since the early days, Tudor has relied on using calibers other than Rolex, primarily to differentiate the brands, but also to save cost. Tudor is the more affordable brand after all. And one might think that given the quality of a Tudor watch, they would have and use their own in-house movements. Well, that's what Tudor finally did in 2016 with a COSC-certified in-house movement. Regardless of the many Black Bay models, this is one cool diver. Of course, the advantage of my watch's 2824-2 movement is that it can be serviced by just about any competent watchmaker. The newer Black Bay movement would probably have to be serviced by Tudor or a Tudor-trained watchmaker. There you have it, more interesting secrets of which you may have been unaware. I hope you enjoyed hearing about these. Maybe some of your watches have secrets too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.